On today's video, we're taking a look at the entire history of Supergirl's appearances outside of comics, to which I'm not exactly sure if there's enough to fill an entire video. Let's see how this goes.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video, we're doing a sequel to the Superman viewing guide, where we talked about all the appearances of Superman outside of comics, to now we're doing it for Supergirl, and we're specifically doing movies and TV shows, just like we did for Superman. Unfortunately, while researching this guide, I've come across the fact that, something I kind of already knew, DC really doesn't do a whole lot with Supergirl outside the comics. Arguably not as much inside the comics either. Kind of an underutilized character, so let's go through her history and see where we end up in the runtime. Naturally, this is part of the viewing guide series I've been doing on the channel, covering a multitude of topics, so go check those out after this one if you want to see some more. But let's begin. We're going to start by going through the history of Supergirl, and again, let's see where we end up, because it's oddly weird how little she's appeared outside the comics in a significant form. So I hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, hit the like button, subscribe to the notification bell if you haven't already, and hit the hype button if it's available to you. This is an interesting guide because I've not struggled as much to put one together as much as I have for this video. You're probably also wondering, why are you wearing a Green Lantern shirt in a Supergirl video? It's because all my Superman t-shirts worn out or don't fit, so you get Green Lantern. Anyways, let's talk Supergirl. Who is Supergirl? Well, Supergirl is typically Kara Zor-El, Superman's cousin from the planet Krypton. She debuted in 1959 and was a mainstay of early Silver Age comics, in the sense that she'd show up regularly in Superman or Adventure Comics or be part of the Legion of Superheroes, but never really having her own standalone title. The character would kind of grow and evolve over time, but not in a significant way because she wasn't featured in her own standalone title. That being said, they did kill the character off in 1986 during Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was part of a DC editorial decision to narrow Superman's mythology down to him being the only one from Krypton. Because of this, there was a bunch of alternate versions of Supergirl that existed before bringing her back into mainline comics as Kara Zor-El, Kal-El's cousin, in 2005. And I think that might be a contributing factor as to why Supergirl doesn't have that many appearances outside of comics as you would think for a character that's existed since 1959. So let's get into it. She debuted in 1959 in the comics. She, of course, made it into one of those Superman cartoons from the 60s, 70s, Super Friends, right? Nope, her first appearance outside of the comics was 1984's Supergirl, where she was portrayed by Helen Slater. This film was a spin-off of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, featuring the same Jimmy Olsen, and this movie is in that universe, even if Superman never appears. The story itself is pretty typical of the time for superhero movies, and also pretty typical to Superman-related stories. Kara Zor-El lands on Earth, she's from Krypton, she's Superman's cousin, she has to kind of adapt to Earth, she befriends Jimmy, and then Jimmy kind of helps her along. That's the basic premise of the movie. She fights a couple villains who are essentially just lesbian witches that live in a dark ride attraction in an amusement park, and that's the movie. It had no money because it was produced by Canon Films and is sadly universally panned, despite it being the first female-led superhero movie that we ever saw. Unfortunately, it also starts the trend where a lot of them aren't great, which is always a bummer to me because I love female superheroes and I want them to have good movies. Why can't that happen more often? But 1984 Supergirl is the debut of Supergirl in movies and TV, which is crazy because you think she would have popped up sometime before then. Now, the first major appearance that a lot of people will recognize for Supergirl was in 1998 when she appeared in the DC Animated Universe through Superman the Animated Series in the episode Little Girl Lost. Nicole Tom voices Kara in Z, also known as Supergirl. Because of DC's whole editorial mandate of Kara Zor-El is dead after Crisis and we're not using her anymore, Kara's got a completely different origin and a completely different backstory and a completely different personality. This is a new character. It was indicative of the time of what DC was doing and moving with their comics and with their whole marketing campaign. But she did debut in Little Girl Lost, which was Season 2, Episode 27 and 28 of Superman the Animated Series. She would only make a couple appearances after that. Season 3, Episode 10, Unity, and then Season 4, Episodes 2 and 3, Legacy, which was the finale to Superman. She did have a crossover appearance in the New Batman Adventures Episode 20, Girls' Night Out, where she crossed over with Batgirl as they fought Poison Ivy, Livewire, and Harley Quinn. That's a fun episode, but that was pretty much all she had until Justice League Unlimited. Now, her appearances in Justice League Unlimited actually outnumber her appearances in Superman the Animated Series, and she starts to get a bit of a character arc in the later part of the show, but not anything substantial, unfortunately. But these are her appearances if you wanted to see the Supergirl episodes of Justice League Unlimited. Season 1, Episode 1, Initiation. Season 1, Episode 6, Fearful Symmetry. Season 1, Episode 8, The Return. Season 2, Episode 10, Flashpoint. Season 2, Episode 11, Panic in the Sky. And then Season 3, Episode 3, Chaos at the Earth's Core. And Season 3, Episode 10, Far From Home. Those last two episodes in particular are very significant for this version of the character. Unfortunately, that was it for DCAU Supergirl. It's only a handful of appearances. I think Green Arrow has more screen time. It's a bummer because I feel like they had a new version of the character that only got surface level stuff and guest appearances. Now, speaking of guest appearances, in 2007, the Smallville series, which was a prequel series about Clark Kent's time before being Superman in Smallville, which was originally his high school years, but the show lasted beyond that. In Season 7, they introduced Laura Vandervoot as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl. Now, this was Kara because now we're post-DC reintroducing her, and she first appeared in Season 7, Episode 1, Bizarro, and that would basically, she was kind of the main plot of Season 7, and she appeared throughout that season and was a series regular before going into guest star territory. This version's a bit closer to the typical origin of she's, Kal-El's cousin from Krypton. She comes to Earth. She was older than him, but now she's younger because of the time dilation. So, of course, in Season 7, she was in Episode 1, Bizarro, Episode 2, Kara, Episode 3, Fierce, Episode 4, Cure, Episode 6, Lara, Episode 8, Blue, Episode 12, Fracture, Episode 13, Hero, Episode 14, Traveler, Episode 15, Veritas, Episode 18, Apocalypse, and Episode 20, Arctic. And then she later would return for Season 8, Episode 8, Bloodline, Season 10, Episode 3, Supergirl. Because I think she technically becomes Supergirl before Clark becomes Superman. Wild stuff that happens in adaptations. And then Season 10, Episode 20, Prophecy. And so the Smallville version of Kara at this point is the longest running version of the character in terms of episode appearances, which is wild. Alright, but things are looking up in the world of animation. She had some movie appearances. In 2008, Justice League The New Frontier, Kara has a brief cameo as Supergirl. That was it. In 2010, Superman Batman Apocalypse featured Kara Zor-El, played by Summer Glau, as the primary character of the film. This was adapting the comic that brought Kara back into mainstream continuity as Superman's cousin, and this movie's a pretty great adaptation of that arc. So you have her as a central figure of the movie because not only is Clark trying to get his cousin to adapt to Earth, help her with the powers, and figure all that out, but also Darkseid and Apocalypse, the planet, are all kind of interested in this new powerful super being. So yeah, it's a pretty straight adaptation of the Superman-Batman comic arc, The Supergirl from Krypton, and the movie itself has a lot of dynamic action. And for a lot of people, this was probably their first proper introduction to Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, the cousin of Superman. It's weird that it took till 2010 to get one that was kind of a straightforward look at the character. Now, in 2011, during the DC Nation programming block that ran Young Justice and Green Lantern the Animated Series, between the shows they would run short animated films. And part of that was a subset called the Super Best Friends Forever, which was the adventures of Wonder Girl, Batgirl, and of course Supergirl as best friends. And that had Nicole Sullivan as Supergirl, and she appeared in all 5 episodes. 2013's Superman Unbound had Molly Quinn as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, and she's helping Superman face off against Brainiac and adapt to living on Earth. She doesn't have the main part in this story, but at least she's there. It's nicer than the previous Superman shows gave her. And now we come to date, the most developed and longest running version of Supergirl that is not in the comic books. 2015, when Kara Zor-El made her debut in the Arrowverse in the Supergirl TV series. So this featured Melissa Benoist as Kara Zor-El, also known as Kara Danvers, also known as Supergirl. This was her own led show. She got to be the lead of the series. It originally was produced and aired for CBS, but CBS wasn't happy with the ratings, so they dropped it. But the CW picked it up, and they moved production from Los Angeles to Vancouver, and it was officially set on Earth 38 within the Arrowverse, where the shows like Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, etc. existed. So it was its own Earth, even though it was part of that continuity. The show itself is actually kind of interesting because it does have the straight origin of Kara comes to Earth. She's younger than Clark now because of the wormhole. And it's a pretty straight adaptation. It does put Kara into a setting that's not typical for the comics, which is that she's a reporter for Catco Worldwide Media. So it's kind of got a parallel to Superman being a reporter for the Daily Planet. Interestingly, Jimmy Olsen is a supporting character in the show, sort of as a callback to the 1984 movie. The show actually does homage the prior versions of Supergirl in live action by having Helen Slater and Lauren Vandervoot in different characters for this series, allowing to kind of have a legacy and a baton pass, in addition to including Linda Carter, the original TV Wonder Woman, and a lot of other actors that had been in prior DC projects. It's pretty fun for that fact as well. Now, I don't want to tell you too much more about the story or about the characters, but the primary cast is you got Supergirl, you've got her adopted sister, which was created for the show as Alex Danvers. You have some supporting cast like Jimmy Olsen and Wynn and the DEO head Hank Hinshaw, who probably isn't actually Hank Hinshaw if you watch the series. And there's a lot of other characters that get introduced in here, like one of DC's first trans heroes in the form of Dreamer. And there is so many cool story developments as it goes along. But I don't want to tell you about it, because the more I tell you, the more it's spoilers. If you are someone who is a fan of Supergirl or interested in the character, there's really not a better place to check out Supergirl than the CW show. And that's pretty awesome that she has an entire series, because as we've been recapping, not a whole lot more before this. So with all that said, because this is part of Connected Universe, I want to give you some notes on the crossovers that come up within the Supergirl series. So season 1 of Supergirl ran for 20 episodes, and then episode 18 of that is a crossover episode with The Flash. That was just to kind of connect the shows, since they were all being produced by the same producers and everything. And it was the first instance of, all right, Supergirl is in the Arrowverse. Now, season 2 lasted 22 episodes since it changed networks, and there was 2 crossovers involved. Episode 8 of season 2 leads directly into the Invasion crossover, which features Supergirl alongside the other Arrowverse shows. Part 1 of that crossover is in The Flash season 3 episode 8, Part 2 is in Arrow season 5 episode 8, and Part 3 is in Legends of Tomorrow season 2 episode 7. Season 2 episode 16 of Supergirl also leads directly into the Flash season 3 episode 17 episode Duet, where the Music Meister puts the Flash and Supergirl and several of their other allies, basically whichever actors had singing abilities, into a giant Broadway musical style episode, which is honestly one of the most fun crossovers they ever did. Season 3 lasted 23 episodes, and episode 8 is part 1 of the Crisis on Earth X crossover, which continues into the other shows. So part 2 was Arrow season 6 episode 8, part 3 was The Flash season 4 episode 8, and part 4 was Legend of Tomorrow season 3 episode 8. If you're kind of wondering why the order of the parts will switch around with crossovers, it's because the parts, they would air the crossovers during a week, so whichever day that show landed on was part 1, that was part 2, that was part 3, part 4. They all kind of run like one giant episode. Now, season 4 lasted 22 episodes, and there was the Elseworlds crossover that took place during this season. Part 1 was The Flash season 5 episode 9, part 2 was Arrow season 7 episode 9, and part 3 was Supergirl season 4 episode 9. Now, season 5 was only 19 episodes. This was due to a lot of factors going on that we don't really have time to get into here. But Crisis on Infinite Earths was the big crossover here. That was also a huge crossover across the Arrowverse. So part 1 was Supergirl season 5 episode 9, part 2 was Batwoman season 1 episode 9, part 3 was The Flash season 6 episode 9, part 4 was Arrow season 8 episode 8, and part 5 was The Legend of Tomorrow season 5 special episode. Kara also does make a cameo in Arrow season 8 episode 10, but if you jump to that and you plan to watch Arrow, I would recommend saving that for later, because that's the finale to Arrow. And then Supergirl wrapped up with a 20-episode final season with season 6. Now, the show itself, you're probably wondering, do I need to watch all these crossovers? Yeah, the crossovers are really essential. They will leave you with one part of a 3 to 4 part story, and you gotta go watch the crossovers. But I do think the crossovers are one of the best things about the Arrowverse, and something that they executed quite well every single time. So, yeah, go check it out. It's a good time. Now, the Supergirl TV show did bring Kara and Supergirl to prominence in mass media. So because of that, we do have a lot more appearances for her after that show than we did prior. So first up, DC Superhero Girls debuted in 2015. This was the original version, which was about the high school adventures of Supergirl and other superhero girls of the DC universe. It was all about being in high school, superhero high, learning to be superheroes. And Supergirl's a main character who is in most of the series. Anna Fairweather was the voice of Supergirl for this. So here's your series breakdown for DC Superhero Girls. We're going to kick it off with the 2015 special Superhero High. Season 1 of the web shorts lasted 13 episodes. Season 2 of the web shorts was 26 episodes. During that second season was the DC Superhero Girls Hero of the Year TV movie. Season 3's web shorts were 26 episodes. Then there was a TV movie, DC Superhero Girls Intergalactic Games. There was also Lego DC Superhero Girls Brain Drain. Season 4's web shorts was 24 episodes, with the Lego DC Superhero Girls Supervillain High movie coming out during that. And then the last season of web shorts was 23 episodes, as well as the DC Superhero Girls Legends of Atlantis movie. So that whole series is aimed for kids, but it's still fun. It's got a lot of characters in the DC universe, just not only the girls, but they got male characters. They got all kinds of crazy pulls, especially if you're a comics fan. And it's a lot of fun. It's about non-violent resolution of conflict. In 2016, Supergirl appeared in Lego DC Comics Superheroes Justice League Cosmic Clash with Jessica DiCicco as Supergirl. She's part of the main hero cast. In 2018, the ill-fated Justice League Action series, which featured a multitude of characters, did have a couple appearances by Supergirl. So she was voiced by Joanne Spracklin, and I think she was supposed to have a bigger role in Season 2, because she only appears in a couple of the very last episodes. She's in Episode 50, Keeping Up with the Kryptonians, Episode 51, Unleashed, and Short 20, The Goddess Must Be Crazy. Those are like very close to the very end of that series, so I think she might have had a bigger role if the series had gotten a second season. All right, in 2018, Supergirl appeared in Teen Titans Go, voiced by Meredith Salinger. She is basically a cameo character in the series for the most part, so here's all of her appearances. Teen Titans Go to the movie, Season 5, Episode 34, Forest Pirates, Season 5, Episode 36, Snot and Tears, Season 5, Episode 37, Campfire, Season 5, Episode 38, What We Learned at Camp, Season 6, Episode 4, That's What's Up, Season 7, Episode 15, Manners and Mannerisms, and Season 8, Episode 23, Haunted Tank. Now, Supergirl's next major appearance would come in the rebooted DC Superhero Girls in 2019, this version being sort of in line with the Super Best Friends Forever shorts from DC Nation, as they shared a creator in Lauren Faust, who did both those shorts and the series, and Nicole Sullivan returned to play Kara Zor-El, Kara Danvers / Supergirl. So she was a main character of this series. She's a bit more rough and tumble. I've found that as a comic fan, I find her more in line with Power Girl, but is still core Kara character at the end of the day. And she is kind of the tough, strong one of the group. Now, the series breakdown for this, because again, she's in most episodes. There was a 2018 theatrical short. There was 52 web shorts in 2019. Season 1 lasted 52 episodes. Season 2 was only 26 episodes. Then they later had a crossover with Teen Titans Go Season 6, Episode 38, Superhero Feud, and Teen Titans Go Episode 7, and then Teen Titans Go Season 7, Episodes 8 to 11, Space House, before the finale of DC Superhero Girls being Teen Titans Go and DC Superhero Girls Mayhem in the Multiverse, the 2022 film. So this version of DC Superhero Girls did not last as long, but is beloved by many, but it is a bit of a different take on the characters. All right, in 2023, the Tomorrowverse, the interconnected series of movies that was going on at the time, introduced Meg Donnelly as Kara Zor-El / Supergirl in the Legions of Superheroes movie, where she's come to Earth, she has trouble controlling her powers. Clark says, hey, why don't you go train in the future with the Legion of Superheroes and see if you guys can figure this all out? And that's kind of the crux of the Legion of Superheroes movie, which introduces a new version of the Legion of Superheroes. Later on, of course, she was set up to appear in the Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy, where she was a major character in the original comics, so she's a major character of that trilogy of movies, and I can't say any more because it would be spoilers. Also in 2023, we saw Sasha Calle as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl in The Flash. In The Flash movie, Barry Allen goes back in time to save his mother from dying, and by doing so, he changes history, and so Kara Zor-El gets captured by humans on Earth, and the Flash and Batman have to go save her and break her out. This version of Supergirl is, cousin to Kal-El, but she is very much supposed to be kind of a stand-in for the Henry Cavill version of Superman from the DCEU, and having a similar costume design, similar look. There was plans to spin her off into her own movie, but those plans were canceled with the overall shifting of priorities of DC movies from the DCEU to the James Gunn-led DCU. In 2023, Supergirl appeared in The Harley Quinn Show with Lacey Chabert voicing Supergirl, who is an ophthalmologist, appearing in Season 4, Episode 5. I'm not going to read the title on this video. I think I'd get demonetized. So, yeah, she's in like 1 or 2 scenes, but it's kind of a fun appearance, and I kind of like the idea of Supergirl being an ophthalmologist since, she has X-ray vision. In 2024, we got the debut of another major version of Supergirl. This was in My Adventures with Superman Season 2. With Kiana Madeira as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, this is a bit of a different origin, but it's still very much the core of the character. And so Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, comes to Earth, encounters her cousin, ends up meeting Jimmy Olsen. That seems to be a really common thing in adaptations, and becomes friends with Jimmy. And some things progress along, and I can't tell you too much because it is spoilers for that second season. But if you haven't hopped on My Adventures of Superman yet, the show is really great. She's a major character appearing in Season 2. She's in Episode 5, 6, and 8 through 10. And then in Season 3, she is a series regular, appearing in pretty much every episode, and going on a really cool journey and a growth of the character that we haven't really seen that level of character arc since the CW show. Alright, and that brings us to 2025 with the DCU, James Gunn's current DC universe with movies and TV shows. Millie Alcock debuted as Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, in the final scene of 2025's Superman film. This version of Supergirl comes crashing into the end of the Superman movie, claiming Krypto as her dog, who was all the time, and also revealing that she is partying on red sun planets where alcohol can actually affect her. I'm sure that disastrous behavior is probably going to collide into a story arc in the character in the future, right? Well, the next time we saw her was in the Peacemaker Season 2 first episode recapping the events of Season 1, but with certain things changed to make it a new universe. She appeared in a silhouette alongside Superman and the Justice Gang. And then in 2026, we have Supergirl with Millie Alcock, Supergirl, taking the lead. This is a story about her trying to grapple with Krypton's destruction. It's about Krypto getting injured and her having to track down the guy who did it to save Krypto's life, and also helping a girl along the way. The movie itself is kind of the next step of the DCU, and Supergirl will also go on to appear in 2027's Man of Tomorrow, which is currently in production. And that's it. That's all the movie and TV appearances of Supergirl. This video is not long enough. What do I do? You guys want to hear about Krypto? Okay, we've now pivoted the Supergirl guide into a Supergirl and Krypto viewing guide. There we go. Car took a tumble. Alright, totally planned from the beginning. Let's take a look at the movie and TV appearances of Krypto the Superdog since his debut. Well, Krypto the Superdog debuted at the tail end of the Golden Age, leading into the Silver Age of comics in 1955, introduced as Superman's dog from the planet Krypton, and he's got superpowers and a cape, and he can fly, and he has X-ray vision, and it's fun. It's fun with Superman having a dog. And that is the whole premise, basically, is what would Superman's dog be like? And that's the cool part about Krypto. Now, despite appearing in 1955, Krypto's first TV appearance was in 1966 in the Adventures of Superboy cartoon. Krypto appears in a bunch of these episodes. This show has sadly never seen release on home video or streaming because of a lot of rights issues involving it. So I don't really know what episodes he actually appears in, but he's in quite a few, it seems, from the episode descriptions I can find online. But these are based on the early Silver Age comics, where a lot of it was Superboy and Krypto going on adventures, so it kind of makes sense that Krypto is in this show. So, first appearance 1966. Guys want to know the next time Krypto actually appeared in anything? 2005. Yeah. Basically, a lot of people that were working on DC shows did not care for Krypto. Superman the Animated Series, DCAU in general. There was a couple homages to Krypto, a couple things named Krypto, but I'm looking for a white dog with superpowers that has a cape. I did not get a single bit of that in anything between 1966 and 2005, when Krypto the Superdog premiered on Cartoon Network. This show is focused on Krypto, with Samuel Vincent voicing Krypto, the first time Krypto had a human voice. Now, in this show, Krypto is adopted by a kid named Kevin, and Superman entrusts Krypto to him, more so for Krypto to take care of the kid more than anything. And there also is a cool, League of Super Pets thing going on with Streaky the Super Cat and Ace the Bat Hound being the supporting cast. The series did have a pretty good run. This lasted 39 episodes in total, 26 episodes in Season 1 and 13 episodes in Season 2. And I believe it aired on Cartoon Network and Kids WB, and I think it was Kids WB first, then Cartoon Network, and it's kind of all the same thing when everything's owned by Warner Brothers. This show is fun. It's adventurous. It's really kind of a blast. And it's also cool that Krypto got his own TV show. And to date, this is the longest appearance he ever had. Boy, Supergirl and Krypto got a lot in common, don't they? Now, also in 2005, Smallville tackled Krypto. In Season 4, Episode 14, the episode titled Krypto, it features a dog that was given superpowers by Luthor Corps, but then loses the powers, and the dog is just a normal golden retriever that they name Shelby and then sticks around through the rest of the series. So, close enough. I don't count cameo appearances of, that's a white dog on Krypton, but they did name it Krypto for the episode, so there's that. They really just didn't like Krypto. I don't know why nobody likes Krypto. Krypto's fun. Alright, in 2010, Superman Batman Apocalypse, when Kara was first brought to the Fortress of Solitude by Clark, Krypto greeted her. Kind of violently, but they eventually worked it out. That was his one scene in the movie, though. In 2011, in Batman the Brave and the Bold, Season 3, Episode 5, Battle of the Superheroes, the big Superman episode with a ton of references to the Silver Age, of course, featured Krypto. During the DC Nation shorts, there was the DC Super Pets shorts collection, which features Krypto and the other Super Pets teaming up to fight evil, and David Kaye voices Krypto in those shorts. In 2016, in the DC Superhero Girls first version, the web series, Krypto has a few appearances. Season 3, Episode 25, Dog Day After School. Season 4, Episodes 7 and 8, Gone to the Dogs. Season 4, Episodes 9 to 10, Pets Peeved. And Season 5, Episode 13, All Pets Are Off. Yep, all of those are pet-themed or dog-themed episodes. In 2018, the Super Pets appeared in the LEGO DC Comics Superheroes The Flash direct-to-video movie, where Krypto is a part of the group. You can tell they don't do a lot with Krypto in these things. In 2018, Justice League Action featured Krypto in the next-to-last episode, Episode 51, called Unleashed, where the Watchtower is under the protection of the Super Pets, and the Red Lanterns come to attack it, and so Krypto has to face off against, Red Lantern Dexstar, and it's a good time. It's also his only appearance in the whole series. Surprisingly, Krypto has more appearances in Teen Titans Go than basically every other show that's not his self-titled series. So starting in 2018, Fred Tatasciore is the voice of Krypto. Sometimes he talks, sometimes he doesn't. Here is all of his appearances. Teen Titans Go to the Movies, Season 5, Episode 13 to 14, Justice League Next Top Talent Idol Star, Second Greatest Team Edition. Sorry, some of these are tongue ties. Season 5, Episode 34, Forest Pirates. Season 6, Episode 18 to 19, Justice League's Next Top Talent Idol Star Justice League Edition. Season 7, Episode 11, Space House Part 4. Season 7, Episode 15, Manner and Mannerisms. Season 7, Episode 24, DC. Season 7, Episode 28 to 29, Doom Patrol Thanksgiving. Season 7, Episode 42, A Sticky Situation. Season 8, Episode 14, Toilet Water. And then Season 9, Episode 20, DC Leader Swap. Now, Krypto's next major role is in a surprising place because 2018's Titans is pretty infamous for being dark, gritty, and super edgy, but the more I've looked back on it, while I personally wasn't a fan of the show, they did adapt a lot of their characters pretty one-to-one to the comics, which is kind of surprising. They made some slight tweaks, but Krypto in this version is a superpowered white dog that has heat vision and super strength and can fly. So, Krypto, literally. He debuted at the Season 1 final post-credit scene with Superboy. They were kind of breaking out of a LexCorp facility. And then Krypto was a recurring character from Season 2 onwards in Titans. It's like our first proper live-action Krypto. And honestly, in the world of Titans, where everything's a little hyper-violent, it's also kind of fun that their version of Krypto caught a missile and threw it back at a guy. That Krypto rocks. I mean, he's probably the best part of the show. In the 2019 reboot of DC Superhero Girls, Krypto appeared in Season 1, Episode 18, Beasts and Show. Now, in 2022, Krypto got to be the lead in a movie, DC League of Super Pets, where Dwayne Johnson voiced Krypto, and he is basically living his best life with Superman. He's got a secret identity even. He's got superpowers. He flies. He has a great time. But then Lex Luthor ends up kidnapping the Justice League, and so Krypto ends up working with these other pets from a pet store that get superpowers that were coming from the Justice League members and forms a new League of Super Pets. So there was that. There's also a sequel tease where he had to fight off against a Black Adam dog. Boy, remember that era of DC where Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam was like touted as the greatest character of the entire universe? Yeah, what a weird time. All right, in 2022, in the Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons movie, Krypto makes a brief appearance in the Fortress of Solitude protecting the space. So basically just the same thing as a Superman Batman Apocalypse cameo. In 2023, there was a crossover between Scooby-Doo and Krypto with Scooby-Doo and Krypto 2. This was a crossover of Scooby-Doo into the general DC universe in a lot of ways. The Scooby Gang are investigating the disappearance of the Justice League, and Krypto helps out as well as befriending Scooby. This movie went through a weird little history. It got announced, but then there was a rumor it was getting written as a tax write-off, so people leaked it to make sure it would get out there, but then it released in full later anyways. But it's a fun time, and there's actually a crazy sequence towards the end of the movie that brings back past versions of DC animation that hadn't been seen in a long time. In 2025, Krypto appeared in Season 5, Episode 1 of Harley Quinn, The Big Apricot. Just a short little cameo, honestly. And then we get to Krypto's big, major on-screen debut in movies with 2025, where Krypto debuted in the DCU in Superman, where he is portrayed as the problematic dog that Superman is trying to protect, and is part of a plot point where Lex Luthor kidnaps him throughout the movie. As we find out, though, at the end of the movie, minor spoilers, it's Supergirl's dog, not Superman's. There's also 4 animated shorts called Krypto Saves the Day, which were done in 2D animation, fun little shorts of Krypto doing fun adventures, and that will be followed up with Krypto and Supergirl Capes for Hire, which is going to come later, presumably after the Supergirl movie. And then also, Krypto features heavily into Supergirl, not just as Supergirl's friend and her pet, but also central to the story because he gets injured, and that's what gets Supergirl to kind of get together and go find the villain. So that's it. This video's still too short. Lobo's in the Supergirl movie. Let's talk about Lobo. Alright, background updated. Let's talk Lobo. Who is Lobo? Lobo was created in 1983, and he is known as the main man. He's a space intergalactic bounty hunter that doesn't really care about anybody but himself. In fact, he's the reason he's the last Sarsian in the galaxy because he killed everyone else on his planet. He's a twisted character. He's got a healing factor, so he can't die. The one time he did die, hell didn't want him, heaven didn't want him. They sent him back to reality because they're like, we can't deal with you. You're too much. And he's a big, fun character. He's a big, stupid character, too. I love Lobo, and a lot of people do, because he doesn't do much besides be just simple, kind of jerk character who makes jokes. He rides a motorcycle in space, and you wonder how that even works. And he throws a chain around, and he's super violent. And he's a nice, fun, schlocky character you can throw into almost any situation to liven it up a bit. So, naturally, with Lobo appearing in the Supergirl movie, let's take a look at Lobo's media appearances outside of comics in movie and television. So Lobo was first created in 1983, but he didn't see a TV debut until 1996 in Superman the Animated Series, where he was voiced by Brad Garrett. Now, he would actually appear in later DCAU materials, but in these shows themselves, he only had 5 appearances, which is kind of a bummer. You think he'd use Lobo more than that. Anyways, he debuted in Superman Season 1, Episodes 9 and 10, The Main Man, which is a big focus on the character. He was in Season 2, Episode 24, Warrior Queen, and then he was in Justice League Season 2, Episodes 19 and 20, Hereafter. So that was pretty much it. Now, in 2000, there was an attempt to make a DCAU Lobo show spinning off of the Superman the Animated Series, but they couldn't quite work it out. Probably because while you can have Lobo appear in kids-focused media, you can't get Lobo true to the character without ultraviolence in his own standalone material. So what they opted to do was they decided to make a Flash animated web series called Lobo in 2000. This was a 14-episode series that also had an interactive website. I think there's an archive of it online. There definitely is archive of the animations. But the idea here is that this is very close to the Lobo comics, where it's super violent, there's language, there's disgusting everything. It's very true to the Lobo character. He was voiced by Greg Eagles originally in the series, and then Kevin Michael Richardson later on. A lot of people say that this is a DCAU show, but it's not officially, like it never was made to be, even though, of course, like I said, there was supposed to be a DCAU series, but it just never happened. So Lobo just kind of gets to be an existing web series where he's got a solo series that's the longest appearance he's had outside of comics. I think that's the thing that's interesting about this guide, right? Supergirl right? Sporadic appearances, but has a long-running self-titled TV show that's her most developed character. You got Krypto, who's got scattered appearances, but a long-running TV show self-titled that develops the character. And then Lobo is the same thing. I mean, Supergirl got way more episodes than Krypto than Lobo, but they all have at least a named TV show and sporadic otherwise. This is all to say that the next Lobo appearance wouldn't be till 2012. So in 2012, Young Justice Season 2 had David Sobolov debut as Lobo. He appeared in the episode Happy New Year, which was Young Justice Invasion, Season 2, Episode 1. He later would reappear in Young Justice Outsiders, Episode 9, Home Fires. That was the third season. And then he would be in the during credits scene of Episode 26 of Outsiders to kind of wrap up a little side plot that was going on. This version of Lobo was interesting because he didn't speak English initially. He was speaking in an alien language, which was different than what we'd seen before, but he does kind of slip into his normal version. But even in the 2 episodes he's in, he's mostly just there for a single action sequence each. They didn't really do any development on the character. Now in 2017, in the first version of DC Superhero Girls, Tom Kenny voiced Lobo in a few appearances. He was part of the Korugar Academy, which was basically like the supervillain version of Superhero High, and he was a teenager like a lot of the other characters in the series. So he appeared first in DC Superhero Girls Intergalactic Games, and then later appeared in the Season 4 episodes Truth of the Lasso Part 1 and Tamarining Dance Club Part 1 and 2. In 2017, Justice League Action featured Lobo as a pretty recurring antagonist in the series. He was voiced by John DiMaggio. He appeared in Episode 5, Follow That Space Cab, Episode 19, Rage of the Red Lanterns, Episode 48, Barehanded, and short number 2, Beep Beep. The thing that's fun about Lobo is I don't really have much to add about these different interpretations because he's basically the same guy in every version, because the format of just having like the overly muscled, hyper-violent, very rude, can grow himself back from limbs being chopped guy on a motorcycle that sometimes smokes a cigar if the rating allows it, you don't really need to screw with that. It works pretty effective in almost any story you want to put him in. Like, for example, the Lego DC superhero movies, where we have Fred Tatasciore as Lobo, and he appeared in Aquaman Rage of Atlantis and Shazam Magic and Monsters. And then we have one of the most surprising appearances of Lobo that we've ever seen, because typically we see Lobo go up against Superman. It's a good contrast, right? The big blue Boy Scout, the really rude biker guy. But he appeared in 2019 in Krypton, the series that takes place on Krypton following Superman's grandfather, and yet Lobo rolled up into this show and provided one of the best versions of Lobo in my personal opinion. This was Emmett J. Scanlon as Lobo, who committed to full body makeup and going hardcore into the character. He really wanted to play Lobo, and he was very excited about it. And he's a recurring villain in Season 2 of the series. So he appears in Episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Season 2, which is Light Years from Home, Ghosts in the Fire, and The Will to Power. And then he reappears in the finale to Season 2, The Alpha and the Omega. And this version of Lobo just fits perfectly and shows how you can take a larger-than-life character and put him into live action effectively. Now, there was a planned spin-off for Lobo in addition to a planned Season 3, but all those plans got axed by Sci-Fi due to the ratings of Season 2 of Krypton, which is a real shame because they were setting up some really cool ideas for Season 3, and that Lobo spin-off probably would have been pretty great. And then Lobo's next appearance will be in 2020 in the Tomorrowverse, in the launch of that DC animated movie connected universe in Superman Man of Tomorrow. He was voiced by Ryan Hurst, and he was a central figure, actually. They had Superman was, of course, the main character, but Lobo was pretty much the secondary top-billed character in that movie, and he got a lot of cool development by the end of that film. And I think it was really neat to introduce a version of him there. Now, a different version of Lobo appeared in Justice League Warworld, and the confusing nature of that movie and its poor scripting means I don't exactly know if that is supposed to be the same Lobo or a Lobo from a different world, but he was voiced by John DiMaggio there, reprising the role from Justice League Action, though not the Justice League Action version of the character, just the same actor. And then in 2026, Lobo is a featured character in the Supergirl movie, played by Jason Momoa, who previously played Aquaman in the DCEU, and ever since he got cast as Aquaman, I thought that guy should play Lobo. Why is he playing Aquaman? So he's finally come full circle on that and is playing Lobo for the Supergirl movie. Now, the Supergirl movie itself is based on the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book, that one there. And Lobo's not in that comic, so I'm excited to see how they've incorporated him into the story, and Momoa seems pretty excited to be playing the character. But that's it. I got nothing else to add. There is so many scattered appearances of these characters in movies and TV that while I think a lot of people know who they are thanks to prominent appearances, they just don't get a whole lot in the overall sense. So in a lot of ways, making a guide that's Supergirl, Krypto, and Lobo is really kind of fitting. All three characters are kind of the last of their kind from Dead Worlds. Lobo's was self-inflicted. That aside, they have kind of that similar parallel going on. They're also pretty well known by the general public, it feels. I think most people that follow superhero stuff, like beyond a casual level, which is like any level of engagement, you've probably seen Supergirl, Krypto, or Lobo at some point and have some kind of touch point with the characters. But yet, none of them have gotten to be A-level status, right? They're all still at like B, C-level status, but they've all had their prominent places in media. I think with Supergirl, out of everything that she's been in, that Arrowverse show is probably the touchstone for a lot of people with the character. And it's a good touchstone to have. With Krypto, maybe the Krypto the Superdog cartoon. That's pretty beloved, and that was a pretty prominent thing for him. Now, Lobo's web series may not be the cultural touchstone for him. It's probably going to be the DCAU appearances or, maybe even Justice League action. A little bit harder to do Lobo just because of the nature of the character, but yeah, all three of them have had a self-titled TV show. Supergirl's gotten a couple movies, but Supergirl's second movie brought the other two along for the ride. So this is kind of interesting. The way that this guide sort of developed, when I'm usually doing with these guides, is I have to take a huge topic that's so hard to condense. Oh man, how do I put Star Wars into a video? But with this one, it was like, man, they so underutilized Supergirl. They've so underutilized Krypto, and they've underutilized Lobo. Do I have enough for even a separate video on each of them? And ultimately, the answer is, I only had time. I had to put them all into one video just to make this whole thing worthwhile. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed my little, a bit of a ramble at the end here just about the symbolic nature and the parallels between the characters that ended up being part of this guide. So I hope you enjoyed that. The viewing guide series will continue as well as other videos on this channel, and to make sure you don't miss out, hit subscribe and the notification bell if you haven't already. I have plenty of things in the works in the future. This one was a little bit different than how my guides normally go, so also check out the previous guides if this is your first time tuning into the channel. Also, if you want to continue the conversation, you can join our Discord server in the link below. You can also check out channel memberships where you get perks like early access to videos and special shoutouts. Let's give some special shoutouts to our channel members. Special shout out to all of our channel members, including these Captain Tier members: Nathan Pinder, KB the Gangsta, Orion Pax, Bobber Down Jigs, Andy the Collector, Ethan Scott, Wario's Digifarm, Justice Outlaw 8468, Shadow Dante Games, Mick M, Bright Decision, and Dante Namikaze. Thank you all for your support of this channel, viewers and channel members alike. If you still wish, I'm on social media on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Soundout12. You can find my wonderful graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643, and you can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for entertainment news and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, hey, do you think I'm going to do a Green Lantern guide for when Lanterns comes out? Stay tuned.